Those have the ribbons. Would you kindly come and stand over here, please?
We'll start off here with the bottom. And we'll say blessing fire. We'll rip it out. Try to keep it intact.
You'll just tear one. So, about it.
The blessing we just said, the blessing of God, we will universally see that we accept the judgment of the will, we wish it was different. All right, we'll begin the service. We have a tradition, we never start on time. Past one. Because God forbid, we know there's something called Jewish time. Just to explain to you about the Kriya, which means cutting. Aaron, the high priest, when he lost two of his sons, the message that he got, Moses told him that God said, don't let your hair grow and don't render your garments. From there we derive that when a person loses a loved one of the 7 relatives, which is father, mother, spouse, brother, sister, son, and daughter, we don't take haircuts right away, as well as we rend our garments. Some of you won't have a problem with taking a haircut. Never mind. Don't look at him. All right, today's service, we begin to try to shed some light on a day like today, which we're going to say goodbye to Lila, an accomplished woman
who it's not possible to write one book about her and feel that you gave the right description about her. And especially, she had a wonderful life, and she leaves over a beautiful legacy. So there's going to be a little bit that I'll explain from my perspective, from what I was taught, as well as we're going to have her children are going to share with us some memories to eulogize her. And as of now, there's 2 grandchildren speaking. That's subject to change. All right, we begin with Psalm number 1. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo yahalach ba'atzas rishoyim u'bederech hatoyim lo yomod u'v'moshev leitzim lo yashov ki im b'seres adinoi cheftzoi u'b'seroso yeheger yoimim v'loilo v'hoya ke'eit shasul al pal gemoyim asher piryo yiten bi'itoi v'oleho lo yiboy v'chol asher yaseh yatzliach lo chen harishoyim ki im kamotz asher tedefenu ruach al ken lo yukomu rishoyim b'mishpot v'chatoyim edas tzadikim Ki yedei Adonai derech tzadikim v'derech rishoyim toved. I look around the room and I see everybody understood everything I said, so I'll go to the next psalm. Psalm 15. Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai mi yogur ba'oyalecha, mi yishkein b'har kodshecha. Hoylech tomim u'foyal tzedek v'dover emes b'vovei l'rogel al l'shoni l'yosel l're'eyu ra, v'cherpel l'nasa al kroivei. Nivzu be'inav nimas, v'syirei Adonai yechabed, nishbar l'hori l'yomir, kasper l'nasam v'neshech, a song of David. Lord, who may sojourn in your tent? Who may dwell on your holy mountains? One who walks in purity, who does what is righteous and speaks the truth from his heart, who has no slander on the tongue, nor has done harm to a fellow, nor casts disgrace towards a neighbor, and whose eyes a contemptible person is repulsive, but who honors those who are in awe of the Lord, who swears truthfully even to personal hurt and never retracts, who does not lend money on interest, nor takes a bribe against the innocent, one who does these shall never falter. And Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi, yadadadadadam loi echsor, Minois deshe yarbitzeini da 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 yamei menuchos yinaleini nafshi yeshoivev yancheini b'maglei tzedek yancheini b'maglei tzedek Leman shemoy gam ki yelech begei tzalmoves lo hoiroro ki atoi modi shiftecho mishantecho heimo yirachamuni tarech lefonai shulchanei get tzoyreroi Di shanto b'shemen roishi koi sirevoyo ach toiv v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayoi v'shafti b'veis Adonai li'oirech yomim. That was Psalm 23, a song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in the righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. And we do mention a couple verses from the book of Proverbs, the last chapter of Proverbs, where it talks about the Eshes Chayil, a woman of valor, which really, just a little bit that I spoke to the family, he talks about the woman uses her own hands, sewing and knitting and putting things together, making her family, putting her family before her, making sure she has everything prepared for her husband and her children, which really, in a nutshell, puts everything about your mother, on how she dedicated her whole life for others and didn't care for herself as much as she cared for others. Eishes chayil mi yimso v'rochok mipnine michra botach bolev balo v'sholo lo yechzor kim la'asu tov lo yiro kol yimei chayeha dorshet tzemer ufishtin v'taz chefetz kapeha sheker hachein v'hevel hayofi isha yiras adinoi hitasalol tnula mipriyodeh v'halua b'shorim masel. So today we're going to try to look at passing from a different perspective. It's a sad time in our life when we have to say goodbye, especially in a case over here where she's the last one from her generation. It really puts down that it closes the door for that generation, and we can look at it from one way of this is the last time that we're physically going to be with her, but we can look at it from a different perspective, which hopefully this will comfort everybody, and you'll have a different appreciation to understanding why we live. The question that we have to ask, what's the number one thing that causes death? In a recent study at the University of Arizona, it came out that the number one thing that causes death is being born. Therefore, odds are that we're all going to end up over there. So there got to be a purpose why we're born. Nobody ever escaped death. It happens to everybody, to the tall, to the short, to the big, to the small, to the wealthy, and to the poor. So there is a reason what we have to do in this world, why we came down. And if you look back in creation, when God created Adam and Eve, it says that God blew into Adam's nostrils a breath of life. That's quoting the verse, Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. The Hebrew word for neshama, which means soul, is the same words, the same letters as breath. Every one of us has the essence of God. This soul is part of God, which is part of us, has always been around, and it will never die. So what God does, He puts a soul into a human body and says, go, figure it out. 97 years. And just all I want, which we always heard from Cheder, we always hear that when we pass away, we're supposed to return the soul to God the way we got it. Now, anyone who has ever rented a car, except in the city of New York, they take a walk around to see if there's any scratches, and they hope you bring it back. There is common wear and tear in every vehicle, but come back with 2 bumpers, 4 doors. Come back with, things should look very similar. And when it comes to purchasing a vehicle, those of you who have been privileged to buy a brand new car, as soon as you drive off the lot, it appreciates in its value because there's something unique about brand new, and once it's used, it's not the same. That's different when it comes to a soul. A soul has no purpose up there. I wouldn't say it has no purpose. I take that back, but it cannot accomplish anything. It's a robot. A soul doesn't have anything negative in it. There's nothing telling the soul, hey, trip somebody, cut somebody off. The soul is pure. And there's no reward. You're just like an angel. I know people always thought that you give somebody a compliment, you say, oh, what an angel. It's not a compliment, really, because angels are not as great as we are. We are greater than angels. All of us are greater than angels. Because an angel is a robot. Whatever they're told to do, they do. A human being has a constant war going on. The greatest gift that God gave us is the biggest struggle we have. We have a good advisor, a Yetzer Tov. Our soul tells us what to do, and there is something in us telling us, which the Hebrew word for it is Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Something telling you every day, don't be so good. Cut somebody off. Show somebody the bird, if you know what that means. Be negative. And if you think about this, A person comes down to this world and they are going to struggle for the next, however long they're here. Every day is a constant fight, and you overpower your evil inclination, and you become a better person. When you return your soul, you're not returning it the same condition you got it. You're returning it 10,000 times greater. The soul could not do it on its own, and the body cannot do it on its own. So what God does, He puts a soul and a human body together, and they create a great partnership. The Talmud, which the old books that we have for already close to 2,000 years of conversations of the medieval scholars, prior to the medieval scholars, already right after the destruction of the temple, when they started writing down the oral law, they have a comparison. What is this compared to? To two people sitting. One, unfortunately, is blind, and the other one has their legs, missing one or two of their legs. And they're both would be considered handicapped. They're very limited in what they can do. So one day, the gentleman who's missing his legs is telling the blind guy, hey, I got eyes, you have legs. How about you put me on your shoulders, and together we'll act as one unit, and we'll work together. And for years they did they had a little business. One day they get caught, and they get arrested, they're put into jail, and they have to come in front of a judge. And if you could just imagine the scene, coming in front of the judge, one is being pushed in a wheelchair, and the other one is coming with a guide stick, and the judge looks at them and says, there is no punishment that would be appropriate for you because you're only half of the problem. It's not fair to give them each a punishment. I have to put them back together as one unit and come up with a punishment that would be appropriate for this unit, for the two of them together. So too does the Talmud say comes to reward. You lived a great life. You did so many mitzvahs, so many good deeds. If you can't even imagine how the ripple effect. You put a smile on one person's face, and their attitude is great, and they put a smile on somebody else. It's like charity. You give money to a charity, and they help somebody else. All goes on your account. A person like your mother, she comes up to heaven, and she's getting reward for so many things she had no idea she did. But because of the effect that she had on her family and all of her students and all of the thousands and tens of thousands of people that have passed through her life, have been affected through her in a positive way, she gets credit for all of their accomplishments. So the Talmud says, who are you going to reward that to? You can't reward it to the soul itself, because the soul is only cannot do it without the body, and vice versa. That's why our tradition tells us when we bury our loved ones, it's temporary. I know the way you paid, you may not think it's temporary, but everything is temporary in the cemetery. We believe in the resurrection of the dead, which that's going to be a prayer at the cemetery. We say that God is going to keep His promise to those who are asleep in the earth. When the Mashiach comes, when Messiah comes, according to our tradition, everybody's going to be woken up, and they're going to get the ultimate reward, because the soul goes back into the body, and now God could repay you for all the good deeds that you have done. And this does not stop at death. This continues as the Talmud refers to children, and it's not only children, it's anyone who you leave over that you had a positive impact. The Talmud refers to them as the feet of their loved one. The Aramaic term is bara, kara, te'avua, which is the sons or the children are the feet of their parents. That although she cannot accomplish anymore on her own, but she leaves over a beautiful legacy. And all of you, everybody here, and all those who are listening, and those who are going to watch it on YouTube in the next 10 years, will listen, will take upon themselves. Where did she leave off? I want to continue. something unique that she taught you that you want to continue. So how would Grandma, how would Lila say this? Or what would she do in a situation like this? Or what can I do in her memory? And the little things that you may think is little means everything to her. She never asked anyone for favors. She wouldn't like to ask anyone for favors. But now she's in a position that she can only live off other people. So all the great deeds that she has done, she's getting reward. Every year, on the day of her passing, which from a physical standpoint would be a sad day, you would say, I can't believe January 2026, I can't believe it's been a year since Mom is gone. But interesting, and this I see still in the synagogue on a weekly basis, when somebody has a yahrzeit, we act silly. We go to the bakery at 6 a.m. and we get some pastries and get a bottle of bourbon. Yes, they do have scotch for those who can't handle it, or you can put water in the bourbon. And by 8 a.m., people are already making it, having shots, l'chaim, to life. May the neshama have an aliyah. May the soul have an elevation. What does that mean? Every mitzvah, every good deed you do, elevates the soul. Whatever up there's different levels in heaven. And as you grow, you go higher and higher. On the day of your passing, which the Yiddish term of a year is a yor, and time is called zeit. So it's called a yahrzeit. On the yahrzeit of a person's passing, the heavenly court looks. They see, how much have you grown since last year? That growth depends on all of us. And they go higher and higher. They're put in nicer places and higher places based on all the good deeds that we do. So hopefully we take a day like today, which is a time that we're going to have to say goodbye, but it's also a time where we're taking over and taking her place, helping her grow, become not a greater person. You can't get greater than this, but to continue accomplishing. She's going to continue accomplishing, and that's the whole concept of saying Kaddish, of giving charity, doing something special, and anyone who could take something upon themselves, something that you weren't doing as much. May it be lighting candles Friday before Shabbos. May it be helping out somebody who needs a phone call, somebody who needs a visit. And keep in mind, you say, I'm doing this because Lila would want me to do it, or I want to continue something great that she did. She cared. She's a self-accomplished person, and she not only raised a beautiful family, she put herself back into school, and she went back and helped out the students for years and years as she went, and she worked with students and helped the school system. And there's so much that we can do just to continue her legacy. So hopefully we all do that. This will be a great way to say a goodbye to her by letting her continue her legacy. Traditionally, we ask forgiveness. And the reason for that is it's impossible not to hurt somebody's feelings, even if you don't mean it. People are sensitive. People misinterpret what you said, what you didn't say, you did look or you didn't look. So, God forbid somebody has something against Lila, or the opposite, if Lila was upset and felt that somebody didn't treat her properly or didn't do as much as they could. We ask both. We ask everybody here to forgive her if, God forbid, you had anything against her, as well as we ask Lila to please forgive if there's anyone who mistreated you, anyone who didn't give you the proper respect, to forgive them, so we can all go, when she goes up, she can have a clean slate, no speed bumps. The purpose of eulogy, as the Talmud says, is for people to understand what this loss is, and to learn lessons from her. As the verse tells us, it's better to go to a funeral than to go to a festivity, to go to a wedding, because you walk out with a lesson. All you come back from a wedding after having a good time, all you know is that you have to get new shoes, or there's a better scotch that you knew about. But when you come to a funeral, nobody walks out saying, yeah, I wish I did something different. I said, look, she did something special. Let me also take that upon myself. Let me also make this world a better place, because everybody will agree that this world is a better place. With all the turmoil that you could think of, this world is a better place because she was here for all these years, and she did her job. So let's hope that we all continue her legacy. And I would like to ask, I know we have her children are going to come up and share with us some memories, and that's the real purpose of a eulogy, is to understand who she was. So we'll start with Judy. The mic is yours.
So my mom got a surprise with me. I was not the demure girly girl she wanted, that she could sew cute little clothes for because she was a seamstress. But I think she was a quiet rebel, and I think that she secretly loved my exuberance and outspokenness. She never said no, was up for the challenge. She was gentle in her guidance and always in my corner. We always loved each other, but weren't super close until I became a mom myself. I remember the panic phone calls. What do I do? How do I do it? She always advised me with grace and listened to my trials and tribulations. As we grew older, roles started to become reversed. Dementia is a terrible disease, but Lila never succumbed to the bitter, angry nuances of this disease. She was usually upbeat, traversing the disease with gentleness. Yes, it was frustrating sometimes and sad a lot. Staff said that when she would get frustrated or wanted something done right now, she would start shouting my name. But for many years, she never said it to me, and lately she didn't even seem to recognize me. She was a gentle presence with steel underneath. She loved her family, especially her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She loved her faith and seemed to accept that some of her kids did not. She had an incredible, beautiful love story with my dad. She was grace and strength and went through life with a song in her heart.
Lila was born in New York City and lived her formative years in a typical tenement apartment on Tiffany Street in the Bronx with her mother and father. Also living with her were her mother's sister, Aunt Rose, with whom she not only shared a bedroom, but actually the bed for her whole time growing up. Since the apartment was small, it only had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and a bath. All the spaces in there had to serve multiple functions. A shelf over her bed was where they stored homemade fermenting elderberry wine in really large glass jars. When sleeping late one night, Lila and Rose, Lila was about 7 or 8 years old, and one of the jars, or maybe a couple of the jars, exploded, sending glass and red wine everywhere. Both of them thought they had died and gone somewhere, and they thought it was essentially the end of the world. And they were terrified by this, but later on they found that the red liquid actually wasn't blood, and they were fine. But after that, they never stored homemade wine in their bedroom. And my brothers and sisters, all 4 of us really get a kick out of the fact that our parents were first cousins. And, it's still kind of amazing to us that, how did this happen? And, because, the families were close, and there were trips between New York City and Cleveland. And on an early visit to Cleveland from New York by Lila and her parents, my grandmother, Ethel, asked the 12-year-old Joe, Newman, to take his young cousin, Lila, downtown and show her the city. The young ruffian Joe was horrified by this. Why would I do this? And the prospect made this famous declaration: I should go downtown with that? What if my friends see me? Well, Joe did as he was told and showed off the city to Lila, but he also ran into his friends, and eventually ditching her downtown, Lila was nonplussed. She was used to navigating all over New York City by herself, and a city like Cleveland was no big deal. She never forgot that slight and reminded my father of it for his whole life. Later, during the early years of World War II, Joe had enlisted in the Merchant Marine Academy, which was in Kings Point, just outside of New York City. There were occasions where he went to visit his nearby aunt, uncle, and cousin Lila. So in the beginning, this 21-year-old cadet seaman was somewhat of a ladies' man, but he was, starting to catch the attention of Lila, who thought, wow, this guy is really cool, and he's coming to visit us. Well, Joe continued his studies at the academy, but through most of the next 3 years or so, he spent time at sea, learning to be a seaman and supplying the U.S. Armed Forces with their needed war materials. Meanwhile, Lila completed her high school education. Her parents were both tailors and in the garment industry, so her mother would contract and make dresses for well-to-do lady clients. Lila, too, learned to sew, and she began to take college courses at Pratt Institute to further her developing interest in the fashion industry. Later on, in August of 1945, Joe ended up on a tour of duty in Mobile, Alabama, and took his time off to study and take the testing requirements to become a second mate seaman. And Dad had come to the realization that he loved the sea, and that's what he wanted to do in his life, is be a seaman and be on, doing that type of work. But events conspired against him. Just after he took his test and passed, his father requested that he return to Cleveland because he said he was sick and he needed help in the wrecking business. So Joe complied and went. Meanwhile, Lila had decided to make a trip to Cleveland to visit her aunt. She had matured now into a beautiful and sophisticated young lady, no longer the gawky schoolgirl that he had visited in New York a few years earlier. The attraction between her and this more mature uniformed officer set up a strong attraction. After a few weeks together, Joe could not resist Lila anymore, and he asked her to marry him. Also, in spite of the fact that Joe loved the sea, an event that's now known as VJ Day occurred, which means that there was also all of a sudden a victory over Japan, and the Merchant Marine Academy said, or the Merchant Marine in general, said, we no longer need you. You are discharged of duty, and no longer was a Merchant Marine. So he was cast adrift, but he had already turned a direction that he was in love with Lila and became devoted to her, and worked with his father for the next continuing years, and they got married the following year in New York City, and remained deeply in love and committed to each other for the rest of their lives. But it just is almost a convergence of things that brought them together at a certain time And it was amazing. That's how our cousins, two cousins, decided to get married. My mom, also was completely devoted to her family and being with her family. And that, of all the things that she liked to do, she liked that by far the best. Later on, I moved to Denver and worked with the National Park Service. And I'm just going to relate one event of her strong views of family. And I was working out at Garfield House, and I had been there all week. I had visited her early in the week. We had talked, and so we thought we had pretty much gone over all the news and so forth like that. But I had done some work earlier that day that was dirty, and I took my wallet out of my pocket and put it into my briefcase, which is something I've never done, and did the work, and later on got in the car and drove to the airport, but turned in the car and the keys and everything, and then finally realized that I had no money, I had no ID, I had no airplane tickets, I had nothing to get on that airplane with, and I had to figure out something I could do. So I could either call work and try to explain what had happened and see what they could do to kind of either get me on an airplane or get another car or something, or I could do the sort of time-honored thing. I called my mother. She had just walked in the door from a day, hard day at work, and she was tired. It was Friday, and I told her I needed help, and so she said, "I'll be right there." She jumped in her car, drove all the way to the airport, which is maybe 40 minutes away from her house, and said, "Well, what do we need to do?" I said, "Well, I need to now drive all the way out to Garfield," which was, the airport is west of Cleveland. Garfield is way east of Cleveland. So we drove all the way out to Lawnfield, the house that James Garfield lived in, and picked up my wallet and got all the stuff that I needed that I had forgotten, and drove all the way back to the airport. So, by at that time, we were been in the car like 3 hours, and she had another half hour, 45 minutes to drive home. So I felt terrible that, I had made her do all that. And, I was trying to explain to her that I was kind of really sorry. And she said, "No, that's not the way she saw it. Not one bit." She said, "I got to see you for an extra 3 hours." And to her, that was 10 times more precious than anything else she said she could imagine. And that, was worth the price of gold. And that's how she felt about her family. And, I felt really special, but she was really that way with everybody. She would go that extra mile and give you pretty much everything she had when you needed it.
I feel sadder and unmoored more than I thought I would at this time of Lila's passing. And as you all know, she had been in the slowly tightening grip of dementia for many years, at least 15, I think. So I had a long time to think about and prepare for this moment. But today is a day to celebrate the whole of her life, not just that final phase. And by all accounts, including mine, she was a good woman. She was a good wife. She was a good mother. She was a good grandmother, good at her profession of teaching, and certainly good at her avocation of sewing. You all knew her. I don't need to sum up her whole life, but I do want to share one story. Our parents had a big stereo cabinet in their house, and they didn't use it that often, but every once in a while they would put on a record and dance and sing to it. Many of the records were soundtracks from musical theater, and in these moments of dancing and singing with Joe, Lila became a different person. She had a really wonderful singing voice, and she was a good dancer. And she and Joe would dance and sing in perfect unison, clearly in love, clearly enjoying each other, and clearly enjoying themselves in that moment. I, as a child and later as a teenager, watched our parents in these moments, and I knew they had something special, something that we children at that time maybe didn't really understand.
Well, we've had some common experiences with our beloved mom. Thank you. You know, this is more than I thought would come here today, but she touched a lot of people, even a lot more than here for sure. Thanks a bunch for making the trip over from near and far. It means a lot to us. And all those zooming too, to commemorate our mom Lila. So some of this might be the same stuff, but it's not perspective, I guess. So making it to 97 years, she outlived many of her pals and associates. Mom had a strong constitution, like her dad, Sam, who was close to 100 years old. Mom sang a lot, like the stereo experiences. She didn't know all the words to the songs she sang, but she didn't. What she didn't know, she hummed, and she can really carry a tune. And she sang with feeling. She sang songs of love and of loving life. A lot of them represented that. Any of you remember some of these names of these tunes? What was that one with Bing Crosby? Yeah, and I remember her singing on top of Old Smoky while she was doing the laundry. I'd be hanging out with her. Right, yeah. Any others? There's a lot of them. She was hip to the cool tunes that was going on in her day, and she kept singing them. She'd sing this stuff while doing laundry and dishes, and just spontaneously belting out music or humming it in any given moment. And I'll tell you, like we've been saying, she's a great mom. She's a great mom. She was always there for all of us through thick and thin, and maybe that sounds cliche, but it is absolutely true, always. She was a cheerful and positive person. She kept her chin up during challenging times, which there were many. She had a way of bringing everyone along in this mode. She made sure that no one sank in despair or negativity, even though she might have been feeling it herself inside. She was devout to her various spheres that she was in the community, certainly our family and extended family as well. The temple, community, and our faith, and her friends, some of who were teachers. She'd run into former students when we were out and about, and they would be warm. There would be warm impromptu reunions, all the time. It was like same with our dad. People would come up to him and go, "Hey, Joe," out in the middle of nowhere, and it was that way with my mom too. Some of these students wrote her and connected with her over the years and expressed appreciation for being a positive influence in their life. Lila lifted everyone that she interacted with, everyone. At Myers and at Windsor, she developed some tight pals. Some were familiar faces from the neighborhood earlier in life, and she did this with residents and staff. In the 12 or so, 15, whatever years of dementia, Lila, in many respects, wasn't the same person she was prior, but her pleasant and positive demeanor and her propensity to sing and smile a lot shone through to the end. She also had a great appetite, like we all do. She passed that along. She talked a lot. It wasn't easy to get what she was saying more in these recent days, but she expressed her mind. She didn't retract into herself. She'll be united with her soulmate Joe at Mount Olive here in a little bit, physically, and we will certainly remain strong. She will certainly remain strong in our hearts and minds forever. We love you, Mom.
Thank you, all of you, for sharing your feelings, and would like to ask the next generation. Whenever you're ready, the mic is yours. You're a little taller. A little bit.
For the moment. My name is Eli Hawkins, and I am the second of Lila's 6 grandchildren. My grandmother was a special person. With the 6 of us in 3 different cities, she strove to be present and a part of each of our lives. That was something of paramount importance to her. So she and my grandfather Joe would travel to Denver and Indianapolis and later Columbus to make sure we all knew that we were loved and connected. They attended bar and bat mitzvahs, graduations, and performances, both artistic and athletic. Whatever we were involved in, she wanted to be a part of it. For years, they hosted an annual 4th of July get-together at their house on Eastway, and all the family from all over the country would gather and share in that connection. Lila made her home warm and welcoming. During the years my brother and I lived there, she always made sure there was a chocolate chip cookie waiting for us when we got home from school. When we moved just 3 blocks away, she maintained an open door to her home for us, and it was a very real second home for us. Her presence in our lives is immovable. There is no world where we could have grown up to be who we are without her steady hand. For some years, I have missed the person she used to be. Now that she is gone in truth, I will miss her completely. There is a new empty space in the world. However, Lila's lasting legacy is the family she created. We are all here today, directly or indirectly, because of her and Joe. In the wake of her passing, because of her, we need not suffer this new emptiness alone.
Who's going to do it? Sorry for putting you on the spot.
That's okay. It's good. I'm here to be on the spot. I just have a couple brief memories of my grandmother that I wanted to share. I think being a little kid and going up to Joe and Lila's house when Judy and Eli and Jake were living there, and having big family dinners at their dining room table with the goofy country wallpaper and the library of bar mitzvah yarmulkes and the endless supply of Davis Bakery rolls. I remember falling down the stairs in a fun way, I think, with Eli and Jake, and just playing with you guys and being in our grandparents' house around Joe and Lila and sitting on the couch between them. There's some of my really good childhood family memories. I also remember a Thanksgiving, I think at my parents' house when Joe and Lila came down. This would have been probably before they moved to Myers. I don't know exactly what it was, but I remember we played the traditional 11:30 p.m. Scrabble game after Thanksgiving dinner, and to me at the time, out of nowhere, although I don't think it was really out of nowhere, Lila just destroyed everybody at Scrabble. Just absolutely whooped everyone's butt. And I feel like happy to be existing in the Scrabble tradition of Joe and Lila Newman. And then the third memory I want to share with you is when I was in high school, I became really excited about buying the worst clothes I could possibly find at a thrift store that didn't fit me, that were totally moth-eaten, that were probably just hung very strangely on my skinny teenage frame. And Lila would alter them and repair them in just the most durable, long-lasting way. And looking back on that feels like just the most loving thing that she could have done for me at that time. It was very, very sweet, and I wish I still had some of those things that she worked on. They're probably all disintegrated by now, except for the parts that she put back together. So I'm going to miss you, Lila. I wish I had been able to spend some more time with you in the last years, but we'll remember you. So, thanks.
Anyone else? This family likes surprises.
I'll make this real short. I remember when Judy moved back to Cleveland and they invited me over for Jewish holidays, and Lila would cook a big meal. It was wonderful. I remember the stereo. I remember Lila dancing. And most of all, and I'm surprised no one mentioned it, I remember the Woman of Valor that was written on her kitchen ceiling by her husband. It was amazing. And when I was young and I saw that, it was like this. I know these people are very special because that was on the ceiling.
So glad my wife didn't come. She doesn't expect me to write on the ceiling. He's real tall.
Only in the family am I tall. Little genealogy here. So Judy and Paul and Robert and Eddie and I all have the same great-grandparents. So that's the connection. My mother and Joe were first cousins. So as I grew up, they were connected. And we had a lot of wonderful family events that I always appreciated. The 4th of July picnics, nothing like it in the world. It was the greatest way to grow up, and a great way to see family, if only for a few minutes at a time. But it was a wonderful experience for all of us. And I think my parents were not just relatives of Joe and Lila; they were friends. And I think that's really an important lesson for all of us. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is that people in this room aren't just my relatives; we're friends, and that's great. And and I hope it stays that way for generations to come. When I was a kid, Lila always treated me as an adult. We were equals. What a great gift to give to a kid. To be equal to an adult. And I appreciated it and loved it and, cherished those moments, those conversations we had. And I learned a lot today. I didn't know that Lila was a Scrabble player. We're Scrabble players. I didn't know that she was musical. Well, I'm not musical, but everybody else is. Anyway, she was a wonderful person. Joe was a wonderful husband. Joe was actually instrumental in my career. He got me a job as a construction worker. I was the worst construction worker ever, but I liked what we were doing, and it led to my career. We're the elders now. That's a very, very strange feeling. I don't have anybody to look to anymore. Generations are looking to us. So we have an obligation. We have to be the leaders. I don't know what that means exactly, but we're going to be the leaders, and we're going to take care of things. So, Lila, you're a wonderful person. You have a wonderful family, and I'm so proud that I'm a Newman. We're all here. Thank you.
Hi. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Summer, and I was the fun lady over at Windsor Heights for like 4 years. Forgive me, I should have wrote this down on paper, but I'm a young person, so I have to pull this up. Windsor was my first job in the healthcare field. And it was there that I discovered just how special the people we care for truly are. Even among so many remarkable individuals, Lila stood out. From the very first moment I met her, she touched my heart instantly. There was just something about her, a warmth, a spark, that made us click right away. As I got to know her, I realized just how exceptional she truly was. Thanks. Despite the challenges of dementia, Lila's spirit shone brightly. She wasn't defined by her illness, but by her strength, her resilience, and the deep connections she built with everyone around her. Lila lived a life of profound purpose. She was a teacher, a role that spoke volumes about her intelligence, patience, and generosity. Teaching is one of the most selfless professions, and Lila embodied that selflessness in every aspect of her life. She dedicated herself to not just shaping minds, but to touching hearts, whether in the classroom or in her everyday interactions. Her creativity was equally inspiring. Lila had an incredible gift for sewing and artistry, and I know we talked about this already, so forgive me for sounding redundant. She could take simple materials and transform them into something beautiful and meaningful. Her creations weren't just pieces of art, they were reflections of the love and care she poured into everything she did. Above all, Lila was a wonderful mother to her 4 children. She poured her heart into raising them with love, wisdom, and a sense of purpose. Her children are a testament to the incredible person she was, carrying forward her values, kindness, and strength. The pride she felt for her family was evident in the way she spoke about them, and the bond they shared was nothing short of inspiring. Coming from New York City, Lila carried with her the bold, resilient spirit of the city she called home. Her stories, humor, and wisdom painted a picture of a woman who had lived fully, loved deeply, and given generously to everyone fortunate enough to know her. What I will always hold closest to my heart is how Lila made people feel. She had a way of making every conversation meaningful, every smile contagious, and every moment unforgettable. She reminded me daily of the importance of kindness, patience, and the beauty in life's simplest joys. Lila's legacy is one of love, creativity, and selflessness. She taught us that even in life's hardest moments, there is so much beauty to be found, beauty that she often created herself with her hands, her mind, and her heart. To my 3 brothers and my sister, I feel so grateful and so honored to have been a part of a small chapter of her life. I'm so fortunate to have been around her, laugh with her, smile with her, and have fun with her. She made my darkest days much bearable. I never had a bad day because I always had Lila. Thank you for not only trusting me, but making me a part of your family. And I'm so glad to be an honorary Newman. And before I go, I want to share with you all, in my time at Windsor, I had a notes section in my phone, and I called it The Wisdom of Lila Newman. We talked about today about how funny this woman was, and even my time at Windsor, dementia and all, she was still the funniest woman I have ever met in my entire life. So funny that I had to start keeping a notes tab in my phone of all of the funny things that she was saying. So before I turn this over, I would like to share a couple of those things. We were watching the inauguration when Joe Biden was becoming president, and we were watching the parade, and she said, "Boy, those people sure know how to walk." She said, "Anything that's Newman is broken." And one of my favorite things to do with Lila was doing her nails. So one time I asked her, "Lila, what do you think of your nails?" And she said, "I think they look pretty darn good." She had this book about the animal kingdom, and she was just reading it, and she had stopped reading from the book, and she said, "Someone should ask what she does for a living," and she'll say, "She writes articles." There was one time I had a face shield on. You guys remember those COVID days? And she said, "Your face is so normal, it needs to be shielded." She said to me one time, "If I want it, I have it. If I don't want it, I don't take it." We were doing a workout one time, and she was counting down, and she said, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and thank God, because I couldn't keep up anymore. I said to Lila, "How are you feeling?" And she says, "With my fingers." I gave her a sucker one time, and she says, "I thank you with a capital T."
Do you have the bingo game?
I do have the bingo one. That's actually the first one. I was going to save that for last. So we were playing bingo one time, and my little Lila, oh man, She was a cheater. She was. So we were playing bingo. I called out N41. She says, well, I have N42. I said, well, I said N41. Well, I said N42. And she said, erase 41 and put 42. Okay, sorry. This was like, yeah, there's a lot. I showed her a picture of my boyfriend, and I said, is he a keeper? And her eyes went wide and makes a fist and says, he's a big man. I said, and this was in 2022, I said, Lila, you know you're going to be 95 next month. She's like, that's rough. And the last thing that I want to share, dementia and all again, we really had a really special relationship. And, sorry. She would always say to me, hold on, now I lost it. We were just talking one time, and she started laughing, and she just looked at me and she said, I love you. I really do. Anyway, that was the wisdom of Lila Newman, and there's many more, but those were some of my favorites. Thank you so much for letting me love her the way that you did.
Could anyone top that off? There will be books of Lila's notes. If you want to have it autographed, $49.99. You can buy it on Amazon. Yeah. All right, if you guys don't mind, I know you're very comfortable, but I think it's time to say the memorial prayer. If I can ask you to please rise. Not everybody. Whoever wants to sit, you sit. El molei rachamim shoichem b'amroimim hametzei menucha nechoino al kamfei hashchino b'malois kedoshim u'tohorim kizoyar harokia mazirim es nishmas Leah bas Shlomo v'sora shol chol yoylomo Bavu shanachnu mispalim badaskoras nishmoso Began Eden tehei menuchoso lochem balo rachamim yasti reo b'seisei knofov loilomim v'yitroi b'troi achaimes nishmoso adino yunachloso v'sonuach v'shaloim al mishkovo v'noimar omein. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper repose on the sheltering wings of your presence and the lofty levels of the holy pure who shine like the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Lila, Leah, the daughter of Shlomo and Sarah, who has gone to her world, and for whose memory we pray. May her repose be in paradise. May the Master of Compassion bring her under the cover of God's wings and bind her soul to the bond of life. May the Lord be her heritage. May she repose on a resting place in peace. Let us all respond, Amen. At this point, we'll have directions. If there's any pallbearers, and if they could remain standing, everybody else would please be seated, and we're going to get direction to the cemetery.
they took them out for us so we wouldn't forget.